Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Supercars Exchange podcast. As always, I'm joined by Shane. How you going, Shane?
Mate, I'm good.
That is good. So we had the round at Queensland Racing. We were anticipating a bit of action, and we got some very exciting racing on both the Saturday and the Sunday. Bit of a lull during the Sunday race, but a very interesting and tight end to the weekend on the Sunday between McLaughlin and Van Gisbergen.
Yeah, that's it. Saturday was, like it was a cracker from start to finish. We touched on it in the preview episode that Queensland Raceway can look dull and sometimes can be a bit dull, but often can still throw up some really exciting racing. And we got that, pretty much from start to finish on Saturday and Sunday. It was a slow burn. It took a while for it to really get going, but after that, the second round of pit stops, it was getting pretty intense.
We also had first before we go into the race weekend, we have a few bits of news to come out of the weekend. So Brad Jones Racing was cleared of any. They're not getting any fines for that incident in Townsville with the hose coupling. With obviously the massive fire that was occurring, I really thought they were going to get something for that, really, because it was obviously it's very incredibly dangerous, and it was just a terrible circumstance. But yeah, just no fine for them in the end.
Yeah, it is a bit surprising. 'Cause I thought they might have still got at least a suspended fine, maybe, but because it wasn't ultimately their fault that the hose fell off the coupling, but at the same time they are supposed to maintain that stuff and make sure it's still in good working order. It's still a bit of a freak accident, I guess, but it happened. So I still thought even just a few $1,000 fine might have been in order, but I guess at the end of the day, everyone got away without too many serious injuries or burns or anything like that. So we'll just move on to the next one.
Yeah. Also coming out of the weekend, Tickford announced that they're going to be running a wild card Mustang for Thomas Randall at Tailem Bend. Interesting that obviously Mustang is the fastest car at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see whether Randall can perform, considering he's been performing pretty well in the Super 2 category so far.
Yeah, he showed really good consistency in Super 2, and he had the results taken away from him in Townsville, but then was able to get across for a win or two back on the weekend as well, which was really good for him. It's the Falcons' first wins in Super 2 for a couple of years now, so it goes back to like their Tickford car would be similar to ones that were used at the back end of them using the Falcons, which they weren't competitive with those cars. So I guess any good results are going to be a very good result for them. So he's definitely showing good pace. It's not confirmed if he's got an enduro drive yet. I've got a feeling that it will be announced very soon. I think Lee Holdsworth still is yet to have an enduro driver confirmed yet, so I would almost assume that they're throwing Randall in a Mustang for the next round at Tailem Bend as a bit of a warm-up. So basically some testing for him, a bit of practice before he gets confirmed as the co-driver for Holdsworth, and then we'll see him in there for those Enduros.
This car that he's driving, the Mustang, obviously it's a Tickford built car. It must be a test vehicle of some kind for them, or a spare chassis or something, because they just have this car in order to enter. It was actually from it's the 23 Red spare chassis, so it's been converted from the Falcon now into the Mustang. It's just the spare chassis that he's going to be running. So hopefully he doesn't bin it, or else 23 Red will end up without a spare chassis.
Yeah, that's it. I couldn't imagine he'll be fighting up the front too much. I think he'll be under fairly strict instruction to just make sure he brings it home, and if he can finish mid-pack, then that's a great result. But I think it'll just be interesting to see that someone who hasn't driven a Mustang, at all this year, really. I don't know if he's had a test earlier this year. I don't think he did, but he'll just be jumping in this car for the first time. It'll still handle very similar to what he's used to now. Different aero is going to have an effect, but I would expect him to show some decent pace. So I would it'd be good if he can qualify inside that top 20, and if he can climb up a couple of spots through the race, I think that'll be a good result for him.
So we're actually going to be running 26 cars in the field for Taylor Ben, because Badger Racing is also going to be running a wild card. So they're going to be running Jack Smith as a wildcard entry. Brad Jones has been running quite a few different wildcard entries this year, which has been good to see a couple of the up-and-comers. Obviously, they've got a pretty good program running through Supercars and Super 2. So it's good to see that they're getting involved with this wildcard program that Supercars is running.
Yeah, it's always good to see the young blokes, make it to the end of that pathway as they come up through the junior ranks, and Super 2 usually is at the highest point that they're going to be at, and then it's that last step, which for some they make it, others if they make it, they don't take the opportunity. I don't think Jack Smith's done a bad job this year. He hasn't set the world on fire, but he's still very young. Experience is obviously the main factor as to why he's not. He's still running around towards the back of the field, but I think you'll be looking for a few more wildcards yet before the end of the year if the budget allows. And there's been a couple of rumours as to where he might end up next year, but I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one.
You got to think about how back in the early 2000s, you'd see the likes of Whincup or Davison or drivers like that get one-time entries kind of thing, or stepping in for other drivers back then. So I guess that was kind of the equivalent back then, and they wouldn't be amazing or flying through the field or anything. They'd just be backmarkers basically. But now you see 10, 15 years later, they're up there. So it takes a while for these drivers to develop, obviously. So it's good to see that they are making that step up, and it's making it a bit easier with this wildcard program.
Yeah, that's right. And it's been around for a long time. If you've had a budget to get one of the to get a wildcard for the weekend, if there's a spot on the grid available, usually the other way was you just got yourself an enduro seat. But back in the day, 10-15 years ago, you always had the two main drivers paired together, and you were usually in the second car with another near as much a rookie or old guy that's been retired for 5 years, and it's been a while since he's shown any decent pace. So usually your odds of doing well in those enduros weren't great, but you got your name out there, and if you could bring the car home without too many scratches on it, then the team was pretty impressed, and you'd be something good to throw on your CV. But definitely plenty of drivers you just want to pick up any drive you can when you're trying to work your way through the field, and work your way up through the various tiers of motorsport. And so if a spot comes up available, then you're going to jump on it.
So moving on to the first race of the weekend, Whincup had a flying start, very very equal with McLaughlin, but after those first two corners, Whincup really, I think he forced McLaughlin to give him the position, really. I think Scaife said it was the most hectic start he'd ever seen at Queensland Raceway, but I beg to differ. I've seen massive crashes at those first two corners there.
Has he not watched any of the Aussie racing cars?
Yeah, the Aussie racing cars were wild. Hey,
he's got if he watches any race in that around Queensland Raceway when they can attempt to go 5 wide through turn 1, that's hectic. But yeah,
just that finish to that one Aussie car race where that guy went backwards across the line to get second.
The final race on Sunday. That was insane. I thought, wow, that was just, that almost looked like, racing online on the Xbox or something like that. You've come out of the final turn, you're neck and neck with whoever you're racing. You're like, no, I'm winning this race, and you take them off. So it was definitely exciting, that one. But back to supercars before we get too sidetracked.
McLaughlin, I think you can't win the race in the first corner, but McLaughlin, I think he certainly lost it. I think he had the pace to win it, but he just, obviously it's hard to pass around Queensland Raceway, and once once Whincup was away, he had control of that race pretty well. Davison also put the pressure on him right from the beginning and got into that second position. And then Mostert had a pretty good charge as well, coming up a couple of positions. It was really a case of who had the elbows out the most as who was going to win it. Really, it was a very aggressive first half of the race anyway.
Yeah, like you had Whincup. You had a very equal start with McLaughlin. It was just that inside line. McLaughlin was always probably going to drift a little bit wider on the exit, and Whincup and Davidson were able to sneak through. Like, certainly a bit of hip and shoulder involved. You can see with both of them, they definitely slight nudge and move out of my way now type thing. I think McLaughlin had enough pace to win that race had he have got through turns 1 and 2 within the lead. But I think once he got moved out, he was still certainly looking for the win. But then when he made that pit stop and the rarest of mistakes from DJR in the pits, having that issue in the pits that cost him about 5 seconds or so, which that really ended his chance of a win that afternoon.
There's also an issue with one of the Mobile 1 Mega Racing cars. I think it was Courtney. I want to say Courtney had that issue with his left rear, where they had to bash it out with the hammer, where the nut just got completely stuck on and it wouldn't grab it whatsoever. So terrible times for them down at Warwickshire and Jeddah United. Just touching on a couple others, Fabian Coulthard just had a shocker of a weekend compared to how he has been going. We really thought he was kind of on the up and he was being nice and consistent, but he just had no pace in qualifying and just went backwards in the race as well.
Yeah, that's right. It's still strange because they only tested up there last a week before, and they had really good pace. And he walked away from that test. When he had read any of the stuff on the various website, he was really upbeat and thought it's going to be a good weekend. It should be a good battle between him and his teammate. And it was just a case, to them it was almost a case of which one of them is going to win the races. And but come time for I didn't actually look through any of the practice results, so I didn't see exactly where he was in that. But certainly come qualifying, he was just well off the pace. The car was understeering horribly, and then he was running off the circuit, and just nothing worked out well for him. So compared to Townsville, where he had a couple of decent results, this was suddenly a big fall backwards for him.
It's interesting because just leading into this Saturday race, when they're interviewing the drivers on the grid, a lot of them were just saying, we don't know how the car's going to behave. I don't know whether they were keeping their cards close to the chest or whether they genuinely didn't know how they were going to behave, because a lot of the drivers said, if you haven't got the setup right here, you're miles off the pace. You can change it a little bit and you're well behind. It's just such a difficult circuit to set up for. Clearly, Fabian just didn't get the setup whatsoever during the weekend. In the second race on the Sunday, Tim Slade broke the Parc Fermé rules just in order for him to be able to change part of his setup because he thought he'd be able to get better. That's how desperate some of the drivers were just to try and get the setup right here. It's just so difficult. We talked about it in our preview and it definitely reared its head come the weekend.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We had because the tyres were included in this new trial of the Parc Fermé, so it was we know that tyres, it's not really known for high degradation around Queensland Raceway, but certainly turns 1 and 2 take a fair chunk out. Then you've still got turn 3 and turn 6, which is still right-handers anyway. So definitely the left-hand side of the car takes a fairly serious punishment over the course of a race. So it was just hard. The setup, it was really hard. We've seen some drivers be quick in qualifying and just drifted a little bit in the race. Others, as we'll touch on when we get to the next race, Ben Gisbergen, he was really fast in the second race. So it was just a a little bit of a gamble. I think, McLaughlin, I think he was probably the most down the middle and had a really quick car in qualifying and still had really good pace in the race. Probably wasn't the fastest car in the race, but that's just the gamble that we're going to see more and more if they actually bring these rules in full time.
It was also interesting to see any kind of passing opportunity was very difficult because the circuit gets so dusty. So that also affects the tyres, obviously, if you're trying to make a passing opportunity through, like, set it up through 1 and 2, then try to go down the dirty side into 3, and then you ended up on the dirty side come into 4 as well. So you can really take a lot out of the tyres and end up with basically like no grip come the second half of the lap, which we saw a couple times in the second race especially. We saw Anton and Coulthard come together. Very strange accident. We'll go on to race 20, the second race of the weekend. So obviously McLaughlin got the win, but pressure on from Van Gisbergen right to the end. You can see the trajectory slowly coming together, and you're like, yep, we're gonna have a big one come lap 60 or so. So it was a great race to see. As you said earlier on, it took a little while to brew up, but when it got to the boil, it was on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We had McLaughlin, he got the start that he wanted from Saturday. There was certainly a bit of pressure from Mostert next to him, but he was able to just keep that inside line. And once he got clear at turn 2, he was able to start building on that gap. But it took a little while. Not a lot happened throughout the race. There was a fair bit of follow the leader, and that can happen at Queensland Raceway. But once we got past that second stop, it was starting to line up. You could see coming from a long way away that Van Gisbergen had some really good pace in that car. And it was, even though there was still a sizable gap, like a 4 or 5 seconds, you knew that that's going to disappear pretty quick. And, that last 10 laps, it was, for me being the Ford fan again, I was on the edge of my seat. If I was any further on the edge of my seat, I would have fallen off. So it was really intense, and even the neutral would have loved it. The Van Gisbergen fans would have been cheering him home. For me, I actually for me that win for McLaughlin, I almost put on par with his Sunday race at Pukekohe last year. Van Gisbergen was all over the back of him, and McLaughlin could have just conceded and thought, I can't do it. Let him go. I'm going to get taken off if I fight any harder. But he fought hard and kept in front and won it. Obviously not the same, same importance as what that race had back then. This is still fairly early in the year. He's got a massive lead in the championship. He could have easily said, it's not worth the fight. Let him go. But he didn't. He put his foot down and said, no, I'm going to take this win, and he did. So it was. I thought, for me, that was really important to see that, because I was starting to think that, even though he had issues back on the Saturday, I think he conceded that, fourth's probably as good as I'm going to get today, and left it at that. It looked on Sunday that he'd maxed the car out pretty hardcore, and he was on the edge, and it's like, McLaughlin's still, Van Gisbergen's still closing. If he gets to me, I'm just going to let him through. And he had that feeling. I thought it's too early in the year to start doing that, because all you need is for them to start chipping away. Suddenly you have a bad weekend and you finish outside the top 10 for a couple of races. Suddenly that lead is just diminished entirely. So that's the last thing you'd want. And suddenly you just invite the pressure back on yourself, for later in the season. So for doing this, it keeps that, extending that lead in the championship, which is massive now.
Yeah, I think it was a very commanding kind of way to win the race as well. Like he kind of didn't even let the pressure get to him. Like you saw, as he was getting closer and closer, you could see that he was like, oh no, this is the pressure's gonna be on. But when the pressure was on, he kept his head cool and he was in command. He didn't lock any brakes. He wasn't running wide anywhere. Actually, no, that's not true. On the last lap, out of turn 5, he ran wide the tiniest bit onto the ripple strip, got a bit of dirt, I think, at the end. But that was the only point at which he ever saw any kind of nerves or anything from McLaughlin. So it just goes to show that he really is, like, what up there with some of the really good drivers. He knew Van Gisbergen was closing, and he knew that he had the tyres. But also, I think Van Gisbergen had lost a bit of pace after using a lot of his tyres just to gain up onto him, but still, that doesn't take away from such a great win by McLaughlin.
Yeah, that's true. Like, he certainly would have used a lot of those tyres up just to catch up the gap to begin with, but overall he had much better pace. I'm sure if he was able to pass him earlier, he probably would have gone on to win that race by a few seconds. So his car was definitely tuned very well, and he was saying on the grid again, like you were mentioning earlier, whether he was keeping his cards close to his chest, but he was saying, "Oh no, like we had to really set it up as a bit of a qualifying car, so we're not. It's going to be a bit of a struggle today." Once they burned a bit of fuel off, they were lightning fast. So that might be the trick almost, is they have a bit more of a qualifying edge. It'll be a pig at first, but once you start burning some of that fuel off, you got a lightning bolt at the end of the race.
It's similar to how the team set up their cars for Bathurst, where because obviously you got to set up for that for Conrod. For that straight line speed. I remember a few years ago, Triple Eight set up their car specifically just to be fast down there, and then it's awful on high fuel load, because obviously there's quite a few high fuel loads for Bathurst. But once they burn off like a quarter of the tank or so, they start picking up speed quick. So I think that's really where they're going to have to be looking at for setup-wise. Obviously, they know a lot more about setups than we do, because they're very professional. But I think that's where they're probably going to be going towards more, we're going to have a slow car at first, but then have a quick car at the end. A couple good performances that I just want to mention. Andre Heingartner, he's ragged that Nissan, qualified 7th, stayed there. And then Rick Kelly as well, up six positions, so great performance by the Nissans. They're coming back. Maybe it's not balance of performance.
The centre of gravity.
Centre of gravity has finally taken an effect for the Nissans, which is good.
maybe, just maybe, but yeah, it was a good result to see them get a couple of top 10s. We don't like when I'm writing down my scribble worth of notes here. And I'm writing down the top 10. I've got Heingartner and Kelly. Like, we've had Heingartner in the top 10 a few times this year. I haven't seen Kelly. Can't remember putting KEL down there too many times either. So, that's a good result for them. And when in a race where it's not like you had a lot of DNFs from accidents, or there were a few shockers throughout the race. With drivers needing extra pit stops, which we'll get to again as well, and all that sort of stuff. But that was just good strategy and good pace for Kelly to get up into the top 10. So it was a good result for him.
Also had Mark Winterbottom coming back a little bit. He's ended up in 10th for the second race, up 7 positions. So he chipped through the field. Anton Di Pasquale, it was a bit of an up and down race for him. He did gain 2 positions in the end from his qualifying, but he obviously had that contact with Fabian Coulthard, which I think was a little bit controversial because he didn't get a penalty for it. It was a very strange incident, that's for sure. Like, I think Fabian still would have run them both wide if Di Pasquale hadn't hit him, because Fabian was going off the track basically after
I'm not sure if he was going off the track. He certainly was not going to be going through there with a great deal of speed.
No.
I think he did clear the lockup just as he was trying to turn in, but he was always going to miss the apex, and he may have only missed it by a metre, but he's probably an extra 20k an hour slower in cornering speed. Di Pasquale's thinking he's going to turn into the apex anytime soon, and he didn't, and he's going slower here, and he's just tagged the back of him. So, I was actually, as soon as I seen it, I thought, well, that's just a race incident. You can't, because I've seen the lockup live, and I thought, well, that's why he's been. I thought if anything, it was more Coulthard that took him off. But when you've seen other angles, you thought, oh, well, it was still Di Pasquale who tagged him more. But yeah, I think race incident.
Yeah, I think it was a good call anyway by the officials. It was interesting because Mark Scaife, I think, was going on the side of Di Pasquale's fault, but then once the stewards said that it was a racing incident, all of a sudden Mark Scaife's like, oh, that was a good call. And I'm like, okay, Mark.
Well, that way he's right.
Yeah, that's true.
And anyone who watches State of Origin knows Phil Gould. He'll always end up on the side that wins the game at the end of the day. He'll be Blues all match, but if Queensland hit the lead with 5 minutes to go, he's as Queenslander as anybody else. It's hilarious. But I was happy with it being a race incident. I think, of course, some Ford fans would have been blowing up that Coulthard got taken off, and the Penrite fans and other Holden fans would have been blowing up that it's all Coulthard's fault. I don't think anyone deserved the penalty out of it. Coulthard definitely got the worst result out of it because he dropped right to the back of the field and just made a bad day even worse.
That's the second time now that Coulthard has been involved in an incident that was controversial, and then there was no penalty handed out, because the first one was obviously Winton with his teammate, with McLaughlin, where there was no penalty handed. But then now at Queensland Raceway as well, so it's a bit of a bad luck penalty for Coulthard anyway.
Yeah, well, I think even going back to Saturday's race, he had he went off. It might have been turn 3, or it could have been turn 6, but just Plum went wide, just ran off the end of the circuit like it's almost like he went 50 metres past the braking marker, and there's always that heart and mouth where you're just like, oh no, hang on, no, it's Coulthard. You do it all the time. Yeah. So he was just having a shocker. But at the same time, going back to Saturday's race, we had that awesome exchange that was between Reynolds was there for a little bit. You had Di Pasquale, you had Coulthard. Who else did you have? Hazelwood was in there as well. So you had 4 cars at times 5, like all racing wheel to wheel. They were chopping and changing positions, and that went on for like the last 10 laps of the race. It was that was really exciting to watch that because, after the pit stops, not a lot was happening at the front. Davison was putting a bit of pressure on Whincup, but I don't think he was never going to get close enough. I don't think so. But yeah, that was a really entertaining final 10 laps of a race to watch. 4 guys that some were having good days, some were having bad days, but all were having a really good battle. So it certainly gave the fans at home something to be happy about.
Another person who had a bit of a shocker was David Reynolds on the Sunday race. He wasn't having a great day to begin with, and then the fueling issue where he was missing just over a litre of fuel, so he had to come back in and get a bit over a litre of fuel in, so he actually passed the compulsory fuel, the compulsory fuel drop, so yeah. It wasn't a great weekend for Penrite overall, really, because Di Pasquale and Reynolds were both nowhere in the first race. Well, Reynolds was 9th, so it was alright, but then in the second race they were just nowhere as well. So
yeah, it's just another pit blunder for the team, and I can't remember the guy's name. One of the managers of the team, that's the first one to throw the team under the bus if they make a mistake, wasn't there that weekend.
Oh yeah,
it's like that almost makes it worse because he's going to be waiting for them at the workshop on Monday when they get back down there. So
it was interesting. It's interesting when they interviewed the pit chief guy because obviously the team manager isn't there, and they interviewed him and he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna cop it when we go back to the workshop now." And I'm like, "Oh, you poor buggers!"
He looked scared already.
He
was like, "I don't want to do this."
Someone's getting fired again.
It's like
the nut issue and now the fueling issue.
Yeah, it's like if your parents go out for the day and you accidentally break a bowl at home and you run out the back, and when they get home and you're like, oh, I know eventually I'm going to have to come inside and face the music. So all right, I'll go back in. Who broke this? Oh, it was me. And yeah, I'm sorry. And yeah,
Ooh.
so it's. that I'm not speaking from experience at all, by the way. that never happened to me at all. But,
never broke any balls.
No, I never broke anything. I was a good boy, so
that's it.
It was never got in trouble. That's the worst lie, but yeah. Overall for Penrite, it was a weekend to forget, and especially for Reynolds, and obviously we all know what happens on Sunday up at Townsville. It's been well documented by now. People still have their various opinions, and it was I thought, well, here's a good chance to bounce back, and I thought, well, look, a lot of people were really looking forward to maybe a Reynolds McLaughlin front row, and how good would that be? It didn't happen. They were barely even on the same patch of asphalt at any one time. So it's just a weekend to forget when, and again, same with Coulthard, like we touched on. It was a weekend where they both had a really good chance to gain some championship momentum again. And even though still a huge ladder to climb to get to McLaughlin, but you've still got to be there with the chance and giving yourself a chance. And this weekend, both those guys took a big step backwards, and Van Gisbergen was the one who took a big chunk out of Coulthard's lead. And is now only like 100 or so points behind. So it's suddenly Coulthard's the one that's got a reason to be a bit nervous.
So just touching on the Drivers' Championship points, McLaughlin's currently 433 points in front of Coulthard, so almost a round and a half now. Then Van Gisbergen's 113 points behind him. Then Mostert is only 20 points behind Van Gisbergen, so it's very close for third place. Then Whincup is 100 points behind Mostert. And then Reynolds in 6th. So it's obviously McLaughlin's just got quite a big buffer now. Really, it's going to be seeing how they perform in the Enduros, because obviously Sandown, so Bathurst, then Sandown, and then Gold Coast. That's all 300. That's 900 points. Just in 3 rounds, and there's only one race in for all of those, so it's gonna be.
I think Gold Coast is still.
Is Gold Coast still 2?
I can't remember. I did see somewhere that they were looking at making it a single 600k race, but I thought that would be
no one would finish.
Yeah, I thought that was for a new deal if they were looking at that.
Okay.
So I think it's still the 300k races.
Okay, well that's 600 points over only 2 races basically, and both very difficult races. So that lead can very quickly deteriorate if he has a bad weekends at both of those. One race at Gold Coast would be pretty intense. Jesus.
Yeah, well, like you said, you might not have too many finishes by the end of it.
They'd have to give a prize to everyone that just finishes, really.
Yeah,
that would be ridiculous.
If you finish, you get 300 points.
That's it.
That's how it works out. And you've got to start the race at 10 a.m. because there'll be that many safety cars.
Ah, that would be ridiculous. Imagine if it rained.
Oh, then they'll still be racing next year.
They'll never finish.
That's it. That's right. So it'd be I'd say, so if anything, it would probably dull it if they lengthen the race, because a lot of them would just play follow the leader. I think then. So I think leaving it with the 2 300k races, it makes them all just go that little bit more insane, and they think, I've got to make the position now, and then they get it all wrong and ends in the wall. So that's I think the format they got now I think works better, and it gives you a reason to go down there for the whole weekend.
That's it.
So if you head down on the Friday after work, if you live in Brisbane, you head down on Friday after work, find a nice hotel. Not as many that overlook the circuit anymore, which is a bit of a shame now that they've shortened it. But you can find a hotel, get passes for Saturday and Sunday, and take you 4 hours to get home on Sunday evening. But it'd still be worth it.
Is it still physically possible for them to actually run the longer circuit there, or is it all changed
no,
now?
They could if they're willing to go over the light rail tracks, because that still runs during the weekend. It's I think that would be a pretty quick no from the local council. So I think the days of going back to the long circuit are officially over, which is a shame.
I just love the long circuit.
I've definitely preferred the long circuit over the current one. The new one's good, but I just like the older circuit.
I just loved watching the Indy cars fly around there back when they actually raced there. That was so cool. Although it was a little bit boring on the Sunday when you had to wait for, like, if the supercars race was scheduled afterwards, you had to wait for like the 78 lap race on the Sunday or whatever it was to finish, and then we'd get the supercars race afterwards.
Yeah, and for a long time too, much like what the Australian Grand Prix was, it wasn't an official round. It was still just there for just muck around and bragging rights. So it was. But it was still exciting to see it. I think they sort of had a little trophy just if you got the best results over the weekend, you still got a trophy for it. So there was a little bit on the line, but nothing to do with the championship. So I think the championship was actually all wrapped up by then as well. So I think it wasn't until like the late 90s or I think around late 90s that I think it became an official round. So which was again, I think it's better for the championship that you can piggyback off. Or back then they were piggybacking off Indy cars, and they didn't have to pay to set up a street circuit themselves. But now they got it.
Yeah. Just touching briefly on like the Sandown 500. It's interesting because when Whincup and Dumbrell won it a couple years ago, that was completed and all over in less than 3.5 hours. So like the endurance races are becoming so much shorter now. It's crazy. So we could possibly be seeing like it'd be interesting to see whether they maybe extend the endurance races, because they really aren't endurance races anymore. They're more just like sprint races. You just gotta get to the line as fast as possible kind of thing now.
Yeah, well, you get Bathurst that sometimes before you know it, you're 80 laps in. You're like, well, where's that gone? I've only had 4 beers. I've got to pick up the pace. But I think overall it's just drivers are fitter. Drivers are better at what they do. And we don't see as many crashes. We don't see as much driver fatigue setting in. So the lap time, and the cars are more reliable as well. So you just see more consistent lap time. Even if it's just that couple of seconds a lap faster. Look back, you only have to go back 10, 15 years, and a good lap time, a race pace lap time around Bathurst was what, 2:10, 2:12. Now it's 2:07, 2:08.
Yeah, if you're not setting something under 2:10s, then you're not going very quick.
Yeah, that's right. So so you're just starting to see that more and more. It's just the drivers are better. But again, you've only got to have one of those days of inclement weather. You just have a couple of drivers that run out of talent, a few more accidents, a few more safety cars, and suddenly you go back out to that normal length. So, it'll just come down to year on year. Sometimes we'll see, race record pace where you don't see a safety car, or you may only get one that lasts a few laps, but you'll see drivers just going for it the whole race, and that you kind of hope that you see at least a safety car, because at least it gives some drivers a second chance. Because we seen last year at Sandown 888 they were just flying away from everybody, and they were just on running their own race. It was basically a 3-horse race in that race, and then everyone else was just hoping to fill up the rest of the top 10. So so you need that. Hopefully you see those couple of safety cars to spice it back up, and drivers might lose a race on strategy or win a race on strategy. So you hope to see that sort of stuff.
So moving back a little bit to a couple of controversial things that happened on the weekend, because I forgot to mention those. $13,000 worth of fine just to Scott McLaughlin for burnouts and a sign. It's a very, very weird circumstances. Obviously, the burnout one was $3,000, and that's a safety kind of safety kind of situation. Obviously, that's understandable. But then $10,000 for bringing up the sign for winning the manufacturers, I thought was very extreme. It's just ridiculous, really.
Yeah, it's a bit harsh. We've seen a few drivers get handed $3,000 fines for doing burnouts in the wrong place. This one was because it was basically on the starting grid. I don't think he'll have any problems paying that. I think he'll happily. I think he even put up something on Facebook that will you accept the Armor All pole checks as payments. So he's got 13 of those, so that covers the fine. So
that's it.
It works out well. But yeah, I think drivers that is happy to pay. The team is probably happy to pick up that check for them. So every post on Facebook afterwards was of Scott McLaughlin holding that Mustang wins the championship sign. So he only had to hold it up there for a second. That's the photo that everybody got and used anyway. So I think Ford got a quick fire $10,000 worth of sponsorship, worth of advertising. That's a cheap deal for them. So it's a bit silly. Like we've seen it in the past with having signs up on there. It was like the old newspaper poster type thing of Holden News, Holden wins Bathurst, and Ford News, Ford wins Bathurst. Used to see them all the time, and it was just toss out a few into the crowd. The team would be holding him up. It was just one of those things that he did. It was good atmosphere. It made it a bit of fun. I'd love to have one of those signs up at my garage right now. I absolutely would. So, for some reason they banned it. I could think it's fair enough if he held up a sign, free the refugees or no nuclear power in Australia or anything like that. I could cop that and say, all right, you maybe should have waited for another time to do that.
Yeah.
But it's holding up a sign, being proud that the manufacturer you raced for. Yeah, that's it. It's proud that the manufacturer you raced, you're with, has won the manufacturer's championship. Barely over half a season into it. Like no one saw that level of domination. It's been like you'd have to go back. For me, I think 2016 would be the last time we've seen Holden genuinely dominate an entire season.
Yeah.
And I think McLaughlin got a couple of wins early with the Volvo. I think Caruso got a win with Nissan. Frosty got a win early with Ford, but he had to wait, till the end of the year at Pukekohe to get his second. So Holden won all the rest of the races that year. So they would have easily wrapped up the championship quite early themselves there. So it's not new to wrap it up this early. I don't know if that year it was quite wrapped up as early. I'm not sure. We'd have to work it out another day. But for Ford, it's their first year back in as an official manufacturer, first time in a couple of years. They've bought in this new car. They've obviously spent a lot of time and a lot of money, a lot of resources on it, and it's won all but 3 races this year. So of course you want to be proud of that. So I think it was a bit rich of Supercars to say, no, you can't take that up there, and here's a $10,000 fine for your trouble. The burnout one's fine, but you see that often enough. So I think again they're making a storm in a teacup over it. It was the clickbait headline though, and the first one I seen was McLaughlin penalised. Oh no! And I'm like, oh, hang on, it's the burnouts. I'm like, oh, that's all right then. I'm okay. I'm all right with that. So it suckered me in. I'm like, oh, no way. But it was all right. I don't think there's any real issue with it. They'll happily pay the fine. If it's only $10,000, they'll probably give them signs at every race to hand out. So
that's it.
it's like I said, it's cheap advertising. I think Vettel did that in his last championship that he won with Red Bull, which would have been 2013. It was against the rules of Formula One to do burnouts after the race. Like they wouldn't let you do it. So what did Vettel just start doing? He was just doing burnouts because the team said, you do your burnouts, we'll pay the fine. I don't know what it was, $10,000 US or whatever it might have been. I don't know, but it's a small amount to a team. Just do the burnouts, give the crowd something, do it.
So not Ferrari. They'd be given heaps of money just for winning the championship anyway. They just pay out of that.
Yeah, that's it. It's a little bit of money less from the Christmas party fund. So. Maybe they're only stayed 2 weeks in Vegas, not 3. So it's I think they're not short of a quid. If it's only $10,000 fine, just do the burnouts, give the crowd their fun. You look at Formula One, they're bitumen runoffs at every bloody corner now. So there's plenty of safe places to do it. Supercars doesn't quite have that. I understand why they have the fine. There's extra cameramen around. There's officials and marshals and other pit crew members that are all walking around that area. If it's covered in smoke, then it can be a hazard, it can be dangerous. So I can understand that, but no harm, no foul. Cop his $3,000 fine, and all shall move on.
So, moving on to top performers of the weekend. For my 1 point, I haven't actually thought about this too much. I'd probably go with Win Cup, just because he got that win on the first day.
Yep.
And he performed. He came in fourth on the second race. So I was pretty impressed with that as well. For my 2 points, I go McLaughlin, just because that pressure at the end of that second race of the Sunday was extraordinary. Didn't have the best race on the first day, obviously, as we've come to expect of him. Obviously, that'd be a great race for anyone else, but from McLaughlin, we'd obviously expect more. But that finish to the end of the Sunday race was great, and he performed very well, as we've touched on earlier.
Yep.
But for my 3 points, I've gone with Davison. We actually didn't mention him too much when we were talking about the first race, but that's the first ever podium for 23 Red Racing, and the team owner wasn't even there for it. He was on FaceTime.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, Will Davison performed well both on the Saturday, getting that podium for second, and then on the Sunday as well, getting the fifth. We haven't seen him perform too well this season. At the beginning of the season, we saw him a bit, but he seems like the 23 Red is back on the up again, which is good to see.
Yeah, well, that's very true, because we've seen it in Darley. He could have got a podium that day. The pin issue, got a penalty, went backwards. The rest is history. But yeah, he's slowly been moving up, and it's whether you look at it glass half full, glass half empty, whether you class it as a Tickford car. It's run out of the garage. It's a Tickford built car. It's kind of looked after by them, but they are still technically their own team. So for being kind of like a one car team, I guess that was a really good result for them. So they were definitely happy. For me though, like for me it was the hardest top three that I think we've had this year, because there was no absolute standout top performer. Like we had 5 drivers that did really well over the weekend. So for me, I had to really be a bit nitpicky and find reasons to sort of not give them a point in the end. So for me, I've gone McLaughlin for 1 point, and that's because the first race didn't quite go his way. The team had the pit issue, which isn't necessarily his fault, but he probably would have only won the race had he got through turn 2 in the lead. He didn't, so he was going to finish on the back of the podium at best, really. But Sunday's race, like we touched on, that the way he was able to not buckle under pressure and keep Van Gisbergen behind him, reminded me a lot of that Sunday race at Pukekohe. Probably his best race all year, really, as far as having to people coming up from behind him at the end of the race. So solid result there for him. So yeah, he gets the 1 point. For me, Will Davidson, he gets my 2 points, because he was a genuinely good result for them. I think you'd be hard pressed finding anyone in pit lane that wouldn't be happy for him to get that podium out of the non-Waters Mostert side of things. Basically out of him and Holdsworth, he was the first one to grab that podium. So you still yet to see if Holdsworth can still nab one this year, but top result for them. So certainly nothing to be sneezed at. And for me, my 3 points goes to Mostert, because he, out of those top 5 drivers, he was the only one to grab 2 podiums. So he back-to-back podiums for him. So third place middly in both, but he showed really good pace across both days. Sunday was a little bit more quiet, but he was slowly catching Wind Cup towards the
Van Gisbergen.
Van Gisbergen, but he was still quite a ways behind, 10 seconds or so. But for me, Van Gisbergen and Wind Cup, was hard to sort of not give them points in the end, because they have made a genuine improvement in that car again, even from Townsville. Again, it's their home track, so it's still a little bit hard to tell. But you saw Wind Cup, really good start back on Saturday, but then going into Sunday, the pace was sort of nowhere again. Like, he was the better part of half a minute off those lead pair going around. So he sort of just had no pace towards the end of that race. He let Van Gisbergen go through I think that
Easily.
halfway through the race, just sort of, let him have it. He's definitely got the pace, and he just, within a couple of laps, he was 2 or 3 seconds in front. I'm like, well, what happened to where was the speed from yesterday? And Van Gisbergen was sort of the opposite. He was a little bit quiet in race one. He was 5th in race one, and just didn't have the overall pace. And we sort of wondered, like, he was sort of catching McLaughlin towards the end, but again, didn't put him under a lot of pressure. But then suddenly, race 2 on Sunday, he was flying. So for that was the only reason, was that they still sort of had like a little bit of an up and down weekend, even though overall it was better. But still that was the nitpicking I had to go to, was that they couldn't quite carry that same pace for both days.
What's interesting is, like, Whincup was saying at the end of the Friday that they were on Struggle Street, and then he gets that win on the Saturday. But it's interesting to see that Red Bull is starting to come back now, like mid-season. I think it's a little bit too late in the season, unless, like, obviously it's like McLaughlin is around and up almost a half in front, so there'd have to be something pretty drastic to happen to McLaughlin in order for them to have any kind of chance at the championship at this point, kind of thing. But it's good to see that they're on the up again, and they're challenging for these podiums, and challenging for first positions now. So bodes well for next season, and the end of this season, that we'll probably see some good inter-team and inter-manufacturer battles between Red Bull Holden Racing and DJR Team Penske, and obviously or the other Mustangs as well, if they're up there. Obviously they've been a little bit inconsistent, but it bodes well for the rest of the season. Hopefully we'll see them continuing on the up, so we have some good battles like we did on the Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, for sure. We had, I mentioned this in the preview, that even though I don't know if they've quite fully turned the corner, they're definitely approaching the apex. So, I couldn't. Then I thought to myself, after Friday, when they, Whincup come out and said, "Oh, we're on Struggle Street," I'm like, "Oh, but you started to look better." And I thought, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe they are really poor, but it may have just been the weather conditions on that day. And but again, because they might have looked at it and thought, well, this is our race pace, but when everyone else might have been sort of working on starting off quick with qualifying pace and then trying to detune it towards a race car and sort of stop when they feel like that's the limit. That might have brought them back down to Red Bull's pace then, perhaps. I don't know how they all work their weekends as far as their practice strategies and everything like that. But I think, they've definitely made a lot of improvements the last couple of rounds, and they're definitely starting to keep other teams more honest. We've actually seen, like, only this round, it's again, every team's entitled to a bad round, so it's not the end of the world. But the Penrite guys had a pretty ordinary weekend. One to forget. Like, I know, like, Reynolds, whenever you hear him, he is not a fan of Queensland Raceway. He's he ranks it pretty firmly 15th out of the top 15 circuits in Australia. So he's not a fan of it. But at the same time, I guess that's no excuse. You may not like the circuit, but you've got to put your best foot forward. He did finish 9th, which is salvages something, but and he probably would have finished okay, I guess, on the Sunday, but they had their pit refueling and needed the extra litre. I don't know if they just pulled the pin too early, or they just didn't put it, or how they, maybe they needed to do a Brad Jones technique and try and put the extra litre of fuel in the boot. And we need more fuel. Where can we put it in the boot? We'll do. Sure, it'll be fine in the boot, but fundamental error from them again. But weekend to forget. Let's see if they bounce back to Talon Bend. We'll do a preview show, no doubt, in a week or two for that. But it's hard to see who might exactly have the pace. It's at this early stage, I'd say it should be pretty, a track well suited to DJR, because it's a lot more of an aero circuit, like a little bit Phillip Islandish, where they were so dominant earlier in the year. But we've had parity tweaks since then. So whether that's closed the gap down, like, they were pretty ordinary there last year, so they they didn't feature too heavily at the pointy end of the field. So that was another track where we've seen Triple Eight really starting to gather momentum because they did really well that weekend. So, yeah, hard to tell at this stage, but we'll wait and see for them.
So that just about wraps us up for today. Have you got any closing comments, Shane?
No, I think we're just looking forward to Talon Ben. We'll get to. I think we're still going to be slowly working on doing our V8 supercars in various video games podcasts. It's surprising that there's quite a few games that they've been involved in for at varying levels and how much they're included in the game, but it might end up being a two-parter. We'll wait and see how much
how much we talk,
see how much we dribble on about. So we'll wait and see. But we'll slowly get our research done, and we'll hopefully get that out in the next week or two.
So we've almost got like a month until Talon Ben, so we've got quite a big break now. So it's not till the end of August, so the end of next month, that we actually go racing again. So we do have a bit of time. Thank you all very much for listening. Thank you for joining me, Shane.
No worries, mate. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll see you later. Bye.